The Two Wolves. There is an ancient story. It was born long before the internet, long before modern cities, long before psychology tried to explain the human mind. It is a story often told through Cherokee tradition, a story so simple that many people believe they already understand it. But perhaps almost no one has ever grasped its true meaning. It is said that an old warrior watched his grandson grow. The boy was intelligent, curious, but he carried a question no adult had been able to answer. Why do I sometimes want to do what is right, and at the same time feel the urge to react with anger? The old man remained silent. He looked toward the horizon. Then he answered with a single sentence. Inside every human being, there are two wolves. The boy waited. The elder continued. One represents compassion, courage, discipline, humility, truth, self-control. The other represents fear, pride, envy, greed, anger, ego, impulsiveness. The boy listened carefully. Then he asked the question that would echo through the centuries. Which one wins? The old man smiled and answered, the one you feed. For generations, millions of people have repeated this story. It has appeared in books, lectures, videos, personal development courses. But there is a problem. Perhaps that answer is incomplete, because it makes it sound as though one of the wolves must die. And that has never been true. Think about it for a moment. If you completely erased your anger, how would you protect the people you love? If you eliminated fear entirely, how would you recognize real danger? If you destroyed every trace of aggression, who would stop others from crossing your boundaries? Perhaps the real mistake was never having a dark wolf inside you. Perhaps the mistake is leaving it without direction. Carl Jung dedicated much of his life to studying this exact conflict. After working with countless people, he reached an uncomfortable conclusion. What we reject within ourselves does not disappear. It simply begins controlling us from the shadows. Jung called this hidden part of the mind the shadow. Not because it was necessarily evil, but because it remained hidden, ignored, denied. The more a person pretended to be perfectly good, the more dangerous the shadow became. Because what is never understood can never be controlled. Perhaps that is exactly what happens to so many people today. They believe they must be good all the time. They accept everything, forgive everything, say yes when they want to say no, swallow their words, hide their frustration, confuse kindness with submission, and call it maturity. But is it? Look around you. How many people are exhausted because they never learned how to set boundaries? How many carry silent resentment because they spent years trying to please everyone? How many relationships became prisons because someone believed being good meant accepting anything? Perhaps even the wolf of kindness can destroy a life when it walks without wisdom. But there is another extreme. Men and women who choose to feed only the darker wolf. They believe being cold is strength, that manipulation is intelligence, that controlling others is power, that never showing emotion is maturity. For a while, they appear invincible, but there is a price. The darker wolf is never satisfied. The more it is fed, the hungrier it becomes. Anger demands more anger. Pride demands more pride. Ambition loses every limit. And little by little, the person stops controlling the beast. The beast begins controlling the person. Sun Tzu wrote that the one who knows the enemy and knows himself need not fear the outcome of 100 battles. Perhaps he was never speaking only about enemies outside us. Perhaps he was also speaking about these two wolves. Because a person who does not understand their own nature fights against themselves every day. They promise to change and repeat the same habits. They desire peace, but feed thoughts of destruction. They seek happiness, while strengthening everything that keeps it away. The true battle is never simply between good and evil. It is between awareness and impulse, between character and instinct, between wisdom and reaction. And perhaps there is an even more important question than discovering which wolf you have been feeding. Who is holding the leash? Because two wolves may live inside the same person, but only one master can lead them. And almost no one has realized who should occupy that place. That is exactly what we are about to discover. There is one detail in the ancient story that is almost always overlooked. The elder never said one of the wolves had to die. He only said one would win. But what if that was never the right question? What if the real purpose was not to choose a winner, but to learn how to govern both? That idea may sound strange. All our lives, we have been taught to divide human nature into two extremes: good and evil, strong and weak, hero and villain, as if we could separate ourselves so easily. Carl Gustav Jung completely rejected that view. After studying the human mind for years, he came to understand that no one becomes whole by trying to destroy one part of themselves. They become whole by learning to know it. Jung expressed this idea in words that still disturb anyone who prefers simple answers. No one becomes enlightened by imagining only figures of light. We become conscious by bringing our own darkness into awareness. That idea changes the story of the two wolves completely, because perhaps the darker wolf never appeared to destroy you. Perhaps it appeared to protect you. Think of a mother protecting her child. In that moment, she does not act only with gentleness. There is firmness. There is aggression. There is a force that appears when something truly important is threatened. Now, imagine a man who never learned how to feel anger. A man who can never say no, who accepts humiliation to avoid conflict. He appears kind. But is he truly virtuous? Or is he simply unable to defend himself? Marcus Aurelius believed that virtue was not passivity, was acting according to reason. Sometimes reason demands compassion. At other times, it demands firmness. The difference lies in what guides the decision: awareness or impulse. Look at how many people live trapped inside this exact conflict. They remain in abusive relationships because they believe forgiveness is always a sign of greatness. They accept disrespect at work because they confuse politeness with submission. They never set boundaries because they are afraid of looking selfish. Over time, they lose their peace. They begin carrying resentment. And that resentment grows quietly, until one day it explodes. When they finally react, they are not only responding to what happened in that moment, they are responding to every year they remained silent. That is how the darker wolf takes control, not because it was born stronger, but because it was imprisoned for too long. Now consider the opposite extreme. There are people who decide to live only through force. They trust no one. They never show vulnerability. They turn every conversation into a competition. They confuse respect with fear. They believe winning means domination. For a while, they appear unshakable. But there is a question very few people ask. Who can live in a permanent state of war without destroying their own peace? Sun Tzu taught that the greatest strategist never wastes energy on unnecessary battles. He carefully chooses when to act, when to wait, when to retreat, when to advance. That requires something rare: self-mastery. Perhaps that is exactly what our time is missing. We do not need men who are more aggressive, nor men who are excessively passive. We need people who can control their own strength. Miyamoto Musashi did not draw his sword simply to prove that he was powerful. His calm was the proof of his strength, because only those who master their own spirit can decide when to fight. Most people do the opposite. First, they react. Then, they justify the reaction. First, they wound someone. Then, they search for arguments. First, they lose control. Then, they blame the circumstances. But who is really in command of that life? The person or the wolves? Perhaps you are beginning to realize something uncomfortable. For years, people may have told you to eliminate your anger, hide your ambition, repress your aggression. But those forces never disappeared. They simply moved. They became anxiety, guilt, self-sabotage, fear of disappointing others. Everything that fails to find a conscious path eventually looks for an unconscious escape. That is why Jung insisted so strongly on integrating the shadow, not so that it could govern, but so that it would stop acting in secret. Imagine two powerful horses pulling a carriage. One represents compassion, the other represents strength. If one disappears, the carriage moves in circles. If both run in opposite directions, it falls apart. But there is a third possibility. Both horses moving in the same direction, guided by the same driver. Perhaps the two wolves were never enemies. Perhaps both were meant to serve. The wolf of kindness teaches empathy. The darker wolf teaches courage. One protects your relationships. The other protects your boundaries. One builds. The other prevents what has been built from being destroyed. The problem was never the wolves. The problem was always the absence of a master. Because when no one leads these forces, they begin fighting for control of your life. And only one part of the human being is capable of assuming that leadership. The part that observes before reacting, that thinks before deciding, that remains steady even when emotions are screaming. That is the inner leader we must learn to awaken. Because in the end, the question was never which wolf you should feed. The real question is this: who is holding the reins of your own nature? There is one final detail in the ancient story that changes everything. The old warrior never told his grandson to kill either wolf. He also never told him to release them without control. He simply taught him that both would live inside him for the rest of his life. Perhaps this is where most people become confused. They spend years trying to destroy part of their own nature. They fight against anger, against fear, against ambition, against strength, against the desire to win, as though these impulses were enemies. But no intelligent warrior destroys his own weapons. He learns how to control them. That is the difference between someone governed by instinct and someone governed by awareness. Throughout this journey, we have walked through traditions and ideas born in different parts of the world. The Cherokee elder, Carl Gustav Jung, Sun Tzu, Marcus Aurelius, Miyamoto Musashi. They lived in different times, spoke different languages, and never met one another. Yet they all arrived at nearly the same conclusion. Real power belongs neither to the wolf of kindness nor to the wolf of force. It belongs to the person who leads them both. Look at nature. Fire can warm a family during winter, but it can also destroy an entire forest. Water can save a city from thirst or bring a devastating flood. A sword can protect the innocent or spread destruction. None of these forces is good or evil by itself. Everything depends on the hands guiding it. The same is true within the human being. Your courage can protect the people you love or become recklessness. Your kindness can restore someone's life or allow others to destroy yours. Your ambition can build a legacy or enslave your conscience. The problem was never the existence of the two wolves. The problem was always the absence of a master. Now ask yourself something. How many times have you confused kindness with weakness? How many times did you remain silent when you should have defended your principles? How many times did you accept disrespect simply to avoid conflict? And now ask the opposite question. How many times did your anger destroy something that could have been solved calmly? How many decisions were made only to satisfy your pride? How many words could never be taken back after they were spoken? Perhaps you have been feeding both wolves, but at the wrong moments. Because there is a time to welcome, and there is a time to establish boundaries. There is a time to listen, and there is a time to speak firmly. There is a time to step back, and there is a time to move forward without looking behind you. Wisdom is knowing the difference. That is exactly what our time lacks. We live in a culture obsessed with extremes. Either you must always be kind, or you must become ruthless. Either you forgive everything, or you cut everyone out of your life. Either you express every emotion, or you suppress them all. But life was never built on extremes. It was built on balance. Imagine a rider guiding two powerful horses. One represents compassion. The other represents strength. If the rider abandons either one, the journey will never be completed. If one horse is allowed to run alone, the carriage will leave the road. But when both move in the same direction, guided by steady hands, nothing can stop the journey. You are that rider. The wolves are the force. You decide where they go. There is a simple exercise that can completely change the way you live. For the next 7 days, observe your reactions, not the reactions of others. Your own. Every time you feel anger, do not reject it immediately. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to protect? Every time you feel fear, do not hide it. Ask, is this fear warning me about real danger or merely protecting my comfort zone? Every time you say yes, ask, am I being generous? Or am I simply afraid of disappointing someone? And every time you say no, ask, am I protecting my principles? Or am I only feeding my pride? Little by little, you will begin to notice something extraordinary. The two wolves still exist, but they stop fighting for control of your life. They begin serving the same purpose, your awareness. That is the moment true maturity is born. Not when you eliminate your shadow, but when you stop being enslaved by it. Not when you lose the ability to fight, but when you learn to choose your battles carefully. Not when you become only good, but when you become just. Because a person incapable of doing harm is not necessarily virtuous. Sometimes, they are simply incapable of acting. True virtue belongs to the person who has enough strength to destroy, yet chooses to build. Who has enough courage to attack, yet chooses to protect. Who has enough power to dominate, yet chooses to serve. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson hidden within the ancient story. The question was never, which wolf are you feeding? The real question was always, who is holding the leash? Before we close this chapter, I want to offer you a sincere invitation. If this story made you see yourself differently, do not let the journey end here. Support this community by leaving a like. That simple action helps YouTube bring these reflections to thousands of people who are also trying to strengthen their character, master their minds, and build lives guided by awareness. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and tell me in the comments which wolf you believe you have been feeding most often. If you prefer, leave only one word that represents the transformation you choose to begin today. Your participation matters. Every comment strengthens this community and shows the algorithm that there are still people interested in philosophy, human development, and timeless wisdom. If you want to continue this journey through self-mastery, psychology, strategy, and inner growth, subscribe now to the Silent Order. Here, every episode is an invitation to understand human nature more deeply and build a mind that circumstances cannot control. In the next chapter, we will discover another story capable of challenging one of the greatest illusions of our time. Until then, remember this ancient truth. The strongest person was never the one who killed one of the wolves. It was the one who taught them both to walk in the same direction.